So now we are recording. I will be sharing the recording out for everyone who registered. So in the event that you have colleagues that were unable to join us this afternoon, you will be able to share that recording with them. A couple other housekeeping items. We have the Zoom chat disabled, but we do have the Q&A feature enabled. So if you want to ask any questions that you might have during the session, you can post them there. If it's something that is timely, I will interrupt Douglas and ask him that question live. I might type an answer back to you, or I might wait till the end when we do a little bit more open Q&A. So with that being said, let's go ahead and begin. We'll do a round of introductions. So I am Ruthie Mabe. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the Director of Security Services here at MCNC. I've been supporting the service and working with Douglas for many, many years now. And so I have worked with a lot of you on this service. And if you're new to it, I'm glad that you're able to join us and learn a little bit more about what we're doing here. Douglas, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everybody. I'm Douglas Holland, solutions engineer over here at Akamai on our public sector team. I have a specific focus on our state, local, and education business. So I've been working, like Ruthie said, we've been together for about 7 years now, talking about different versions of what we call this product. But we're going to be talking about our secure internet access today.
Great. Thank you, Douglas. And with that being said, I am not here for any more preamble. I will just hand it off to Douglas to begin the session.
All right, sounds good. So let's jump right in and start talking about secure internet access. And we want to just talk about some of just a refresher on some of the things you can do with the policy. There's some new things going on in North Carolina that we wanted to make sure that we address and talk about. So we'll talk about those. Like Ruthie said, type any questions you have in the chat, and we'll make sure, or the Q&A, and we'll make sure to get those answered as we go along. And then we'll have time at the end, I'm sure, as well. So what we've done here is logged into a tool called Enterprise Center. So when you log into control.akamai.com, that's our online portal that you use to configure your service. From the menu, all I've done is selected on the menu here and gone to this tool here called Enterprise Center. And so when you reach Enterprise Center, you're going to land on this dashboard, and we will talk about this dashboard in a little bit more detail here after a few minutes, and we'll switch to a different account that's got some information here that we can show you. But did want to kind of point your attention here to this DNS server widget. This is the IP addresses that are assigned to MCNC for this service. So these are the values that you set your DNS forwarders to. So each one of you that subscribes to Secure Internet Access is going to have your own specific set of IPv4 and IPv6 addresses. So don't try to copy these down. These won't work for your particular case. Each one of you will have your own specific set of IP addresses that are assigned to your organization, and you're the only one that uses those. So that is where you would get the DNS server values if you ever need those. Now, first thing that I wanted to start with is talking about the policy. So when you send your, you set up your DNS forwarders to send your DNS requests out to Akamai, we are going to apply a policy towards that traffic. Now, you can send your traffic to us either by setting your external DNS forwarders in your internal DNS system. We can also use client software for devices that may not always be behind your firewall. And we also have some virtual machines that you can use to identify devices in your network that make violations to the policy that we're going to talk about. So we'll talk about the virtual machines and the client software here in a minute, but just wanted to let you know there's 3 different ways you can send us your DNS requests, and 2 of those ways will help us identify what device sent us those requests. Now, when we look at a policy, I'm going to open up this policy, and Wanted to start, as always, with our threat section of the policy. So this is going to define kind of the meat and potatoes of what this service does. It keeps all of the users in your organization safe from things like malware, drop sites, phishing domains, command and control infrastructure, DNS data exfiltration. So when we set up a policy, I would recommend the following settings. So for our known and suspected domains, anything that's a malware, phishing, command and control, or DNS data exfiltration, definitely want to set those to block. And then, if you'd like to give the user an error page, we'll supply an error page for those as well. There's a couple of other little kinds of domains here in the threat portion of the policy. The change that they've made, some of you that have been working with these policies for a while might notice, hey, these other kind of things are now kind of lumped into the known and suspected categories. And so you can, kind of makes it easier to kind of select what you want to do with these. So things like adware, coin mining, potentially harmful domains, and DNS tunneling, I do recommend setting those to block. There's nothing good happening in those categories. So those are pretty safe to block. So if you feel comfortable setting those to block, I would urge you to do so. Like I said, nothing good is happening in those categories. There are two categories here called newly registered and newly seen domains. I suggest setting those to monitor. Now, just because something is new does not mean that it's malicious per se, but the newer domains do have greater likelihood of being malicious. So it's worth keeping an eye on them. So by setting the action to monitor, monitor means that we will resolve any domain in that category, but we will generate an event. So you can go and have a look at that in your reporting. And if you see something that looks kind of sketchy or troubling or something that you want to take action on, then you can do so.
Douglas,
So
if I
yes,
could just interject really quickly,
of course.
for those of you that have been using the service for a while, you may log in and if your policy is really old, you haven't updated it in quite some time, some of those policy options that you're looking at here may look different, some of those categories. So if that is the case, Douglas, correct me if I'm wrong, best thing to do would just be to create a new policy and configure it that way.
I would do that. Yeah. If you've got like a super old policy, yeah, to Ruthie's point, if you haven't been in there in a long time, I think those should have updated as we've done, code pushes, like some of those really old policies should have updated to give you this view. If you're not seeing this view though, you might want to, if it's been a really, really long time, wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe, create a new policy and delete the old one. Just to kind of give you the better posture here. All right. Now, the other thing you can do in this section of the policy is turn on alerts. So let's say maybe folks are clicking on phishing links and you want to know about it right away. Then you go ahead and turn on the alerts for phishing. That means anytime we see a DNS request for a phishing domain or anything that's classified as phishing, we'll go ahead and send you an email and let you know that that has happened. So you can set these alerts on or off as you would like. If you want to know about all this stuff, you can do that. What a lot of folks do is, maybe they'll just, understand that, hey, malware and phishing, we're going to be blocking those. We don't need to know about them right away. That's not, anything that's too troublesome per se. But if there's command and control or DNS data exfiltration stuff happening, that could indicate that maybe we've got some kind of compromise in our environment. Might want to know about that right away so we could start looking into it, right? So what a lot of folks will do is turn on alerts for command and control and DNS data exfiltration, not adware. This one, set it like that, and then that means we'll send you emails when there's command and control and DNS data exfiltration domains detected. But all the other ones, you can just trust that, hey, we're doing our job and blocking those for you, and you can go in and look at them when you have time. But keep in mind, this is all up to you. You can set it up however you would like to. So this is the threat portion of the policy, determines what happens when we see requests for malicious domains coming from your organization. And like I said, if you set it up like this, we're going to block all the bad stuff for you.
Douglas,
Now,
I did have a question that came.
sure.
You might be planning on talking about this in a little bit, but in the event that someone were to be using the monitor action, how would they be able to see if someone was trying to access that site?
Yeah, so you'll get an event, and when we look at like our threat events report that shows all of your different categories, so you'll get you'll have a dashboard that lets you look at all your malware, phishing, command and control, DNS data exfiltration events, and it will show you the action that was taken on that request. So if you're policy is set to block. Let's say you got everything set to block. You'll see that the action taken was blocked, but let's say it was a newly registered domain. You would see that the action taken was monitor. So you'll get the event, but then you'll be able to see, was this blocked or was it allowed? That kind of thing. You'll see that. And we'll look at what those look like here in just a minute.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now, next section of your policy is access control. So this is going to help you set up maybe your like acceptable use policy or being able to do category blocks and things of that nature. So where you might want to start in this portion of the policy is here in our category section. So this is where you are going to hopefully help be in compliance with the new North Carolina laws that state, hey, anything that's a kind of a state-owned device or government-owned device must not have access to pornography websites. So we've got 86 different categories of sites that you can choose an action on here. And pornography just happens to be one of them. It's down here, and we can just select that. When we click on that, it's going to move it over here to the right, setting that action to block. So super easy. We just blocked porn, right? And there's other things that are kind of semi-adjacent to pornography, like lingerie, and there's a couple other ones in here. Lingerie, nudism, and naturalism, things like that. So you can kind of make a choice or some of those other categories, things that you want to block as well. So you can go ahead and set these, select any of these categories. Like I said, choosing them will move them over here to the right and set that action to block. Now, there are other actions you can take. So there is bypass, block, monitor, and allow. Monitor means the exact same thing. We will allow resolution of that category, but we will give you an event that lets you know that's happened. Allow, of course, means allow. Block, of course, means we'll block it. Bypass means we will bypass the proxy service. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the proxy service here in just a second, but actually, let's talk about it right now, because the proxy service is going to enable this category operation. So if we go over here to our settings section, we can see that our policy type is DNS only. Now, I want to say 100% of you that are on this call are using us for DNS only. So that means we block bad domains, resolve good domains, and then anything in your acceptable use policy, we're kind of taking action on those as well. This means we're just looking at DNS requests only. So domain.com, domain.edu, domain. Whatever, right? If we change our policy type to DNS plus proxy, I'm going to go ahead and select yes. Proxy service means that what we can do is now start looking at the full URL of what's being requested. Now, what this proxy acts is, it's what we call a selective proxy. So meaning that there's two kinds of domains when we're looking at malicious domains. They're kind of in two categories. They're known and maybe suspected, or we call them suspected domains. So when we're using the proxy service, anything that is a known domain, so a domain that was set up for the sole purposes of doing malicious activities, it's a known phishing site, known malware drop site, we know we can block those each and every time. They're serve no purpose on the internet. They're just bad stuff, right? So we know we can block those each and every time. We don't send those through the proxy. We just block it. Anything that's a known good domain, MCNC.org, Akamai.com, GitHub, YouTube, all these kind of things that are safe, useful, have a good purpose on the internet, we'll go ahead and resolve those each and every time. Those don't need to go through the proxy. But there are things that live kind of in the middle of those two extremes. So when we think of, oh, a good example is Amazon S3 buckets. By and large, S3 buckets are pretty safe to use, but we can't have nice things in 2025. There's miscreants out there that use S3 buckets to use them as malware drop sites or phishing domains, stuff like that. Well, we can't just go and block s3.amazon.com. That's a pretty wide brushstroke. It does more harm than good. But by turning on this proxy service, what we can do now is start looking at the full URL of those S3 domains. And now we can detect those malicious buckets. We'll still resolve and provide access to the safe buckets, but any of these S3 buckets that are used to host like phishing domains and stuff, we'll go ahead and block those for you. So maybe we've got a domain, it's domain.com in it, and that's safe at the root. But if it's domain.com / Doug's malware repository, that looks a little sketchy. Maybe we want to take a closer look at that. We would send that kind of what we call risky domain off to the proxy service, look at the full URL. Okay. Now so that URL concept and that's going to come into play here when we talk about lists in a second, but want you to understand that DNS means we're looking at the DNS request only. DNS plus proxy means we'll look at the full URL of a request. All right, now I'm going to save this real quick just so it stays here when I go back to my access control. All right, so we talked about categories, right? We've got all these different categories of sites that we can take an action on. And once again, you can choose what action you want to take. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, you've got all these categories. Why would I want to select anything other than block? There is a category in here, for example, called computer and internet security. And I probably would want to set that one to, in this case, since I've got a proxy service, bypass the proxy. And if I click associate, that will do that. Now, what happens in computer and internet security? Let's say you're using a phishing training service, something like KnowBe4. What's KnowBe4 going to do? And to send our users phishing emails, right? Well, in our threat section, we said, hey, block phishing, right? So if we didn't do the step I just did, any of those KnowBe4 domains would probably get blocked as phishing emails. So what the computer and internet security does, all of the KnowBe4 domains and phishing training service type applications are in this category. By setting that to bypass or allow in a DNS only policy, we'll allow those phishing links to work, but we'll still block all the truly malicious ones. Now, those of you that haven't looked at a policy in a very long time might notice that there's something new down here, and this has been around for a few years now, but there are some folks that are just have set this up and then just let it cook. So for those of you that haven't seen this, this is what we call application controls. And as we look at this, we see, oh, wow, there's almost 9,600 different applications that we're tracking here at Akamai. And we can see things like, oh, there's gaming sites, there's social media, there's file sharing sites, there's all these different kind of applications that live on the internet, things that we typically didn't have a whole lot of control over. But now you do. So very, very common. And, I've talked to a bunch of folks in this organization that have wanted to block things like TikTok. Public sector folks want to block TikTok a lot these days. TikTok has a little friend that's called WeChat. We can go ahead and do that. Set him to block associate. There in about, 5 seconds, we created a policy that blocks TikTok and WeChat. So all of those little applications that we saw in the list here, you can select whatever particular action you might want to take on these specific applications. Now, what's kind of cool is you can use these controls in conjunction with each other to create pretty granular policies that can help you solve different use cases. So an example I like to use is file sharing. Let's say we've got a problem with folks that are uploading stuff off our network up into file sharing services, and it's causing problems. We've got our DLP policy, we've got privacy policies, all these kind of things, and folks uploading stuff off our network into file sharing services is causing a big problem. We want to put an end to that. Well, what we can do is in our category section, we can look for our friend file sharing. I'll select that and it's going to set that to block. So now we've blocked all of our file sharing applications. What's cool is it'll show us here on this little blue link 276 different file sharing applications that we're going to block for you. So you can kind of see what's involved with that particular category. Now, for instance, let's say we've got a file sharing service that is allowed by your organization. So for argument's sake, we're just going to say, hey, we've said y'all can use Dropbox as your file sharing service. So we'll go ahead and select Dropbox. Now we can change this and we'll change that to bypass since I have proxy turned on here and associate that. Now what we're going to do is block all of these file sharing apps, 276 of them, except for Dropbox. You can now go to Dropbox. So the application control will override the group control. So now we've got a policy that says, hey, you can only go to Dropbox for file sharing. So that kind of gets us where we want to go. But hey, folks could still upload files into Dropbox if they went there, right? So we didn't completely solve our use case. Well, what we can do, since we have our proxy service turned on, our proxy service enables this category operations. So the category operations defines what can folks do when they're on certain kinds of sites. So if we open this up, what we can do is look down here for in our 260 different controls here. This control called uploading to file sharing services. When I select that, it's set to block, associate that. Look at that. Now we've created a policy that says we're going to block all file sharing apps except for Dropbox. And when you're on Dropbox, only thing you can do is look at files that are already there. If you go to upload a file, we will block that for you. So in our category operations, you do have a bunch of different controls. You can do things with like social media, like maybe you want to set a policy. Hey, you know what? You can go to social media sites. You can go to Twitter. You can read the tweets all day long, but if you go to tweet on your work computer, we don't want you tweeting from your work computer. So posting to virtual communities would be disallowed in that case. So you've got all these different kinds of controls that you can put on different kinds of or categories of sites out on the internet. So are my folks going to certain kinds of sites on the internet? If so, is that allowed? And if that's allowed, what can they do when they're on those kinds of sites? So application visibility and control. Now, you might have noticed that I jumped over a couple of things up here at the top, like this risk section. This risk section, I don't recommend using. And the only reason that I don't is because it can be a little aggressive and block stuff that you probably are using or want your folks to be able to use. So I'll show you an example. Now, critical is the one thing that is safe to block. I would say go ahead and do that. But even if I go with high, let's associate that, and I'll show you what I mean by this. So we've got in the critical section, there's these three, looks like coin and web mining kind of things. This doesn't look like anything that, people would need to be using for work purposes. So probably safe to block that. But let's look at these risk level of high. And there's 1,500 applications in here. So we start looking at what's in this category. You're going to see things that you probably need to use. I think there's Adobe apps in here. ADP. If folks couldn't get to ADP, that could cause a little bit of consternation for folks if they can't get to see their pay stubs and things of that nature. There's a bunch of different things in here that, probably a lot of stuff you would want to block, but a lot of stuff that people would use. I think there's even some Microsoft stuff in here. So these risk levels, I don't recommend using them. I just wouldn't use them. I'd use the categories and the application controls to block things that you truly want to block. All right. Now, final thing we can do in the policy is set up what they call custom lists. And these are block lists and exception lists. So sites you always want to block and stuff you always want to allow. Now, I wanted to talk about these lists in a little bit more detail just because in talking with different organizations across the public sector, I see folks making some mistakes that I wanted to point out just to kind of clear up some confusion that might be happening in these lists. So I've created here a demo block list and a demo allow list. If we open up this block list, this is going to be, of course, sites that we always want to block. Now we can set this up using domains. So we've got all of the domains. We've got two categories, known and suspected. The advantage of known and suspected on your list here is you can choose different actions to take on these, whether they're known or suspected. So maybe you've got a list of sites you always want to block, but then maybe there's a list of sites you want to just monitor. You could put those domains in the suspected section. And then when we associate it in the policy, you can set the suspected part of your list to monitor. So it would create a thing. So maybe you've said, hey guys, we don't want you to go into this kind of site. You want to see, all right, who's not paying attention or going to it anyway. You could set that up to monitor and it would let you know. Okay. So domains are primarily what you're going to use. And if you're using a DNS only policy, this is the only place you can put stuff is in the domains. Now, can put IPs in here, so you can block specific IPs if you want to. So you can do that as well. Now, the other thing, excuse me, the other thing you can do in these lists, you've got a couple of sections down here for file hashes and URLs. Keep in mind that you must be using the proxy service for the file hash and URL sections of these lists to be evaluated. So what I'll see is folks will put things here in the URLs, and they'll actually even put just plain domains in the URL. You want to put your plain domains, whatever.com, whatever.edu, whatever.net, put those up in the domain section of your list. URLs can be used if you've got the proxy enabled. You can do domain.com/a path, and that will be evaluated. In a DNS only policy, we don't look at URLs. We just look at the domain. So if you put anything in that URL section, it will not be evaluated at all. So one of the things that we run across from time to time is folks will put things in a URL portion of their policy. Hey, this list isn't working. This, they'll either open a case or they'll call me or something will happen, and they'll say, hey, this URL portion of this list isn't working. Yeah, because it's a DNS only policy. In a DNS only policy, the URL is not evaluated. Now, you can use the top level domain in a DNS only policy. This TLD section will work. So if you wanted to block something like .rocks or whatever, there's a million of these different top level domains now. Some of them just have a lot of sketchy garbage in them. So a lot of times folks want to block that whole top level domain. And you can certainly do that. Put those in there. Just remember that in a top level domain block list, you cannot use .com, .net, or .edu. Those won't work in the TLD blocks. Okay.
Hey, Douglas.
Yes.
Before we leave this section, a good question came in about the difference between using a custom block list and then the acceptable use policy portion of the threat policy. So let's use WeChat, for example, or TikTok. If you want to stop your users from going to TikTok, is it better to do that at the acceptable use policy place where you actually block the application? Should you block it at the custom block list here? Should you do both?
Fantastic question. And you don't have to do both. I would not suggest doing both. You can do one or the other. The advantage of using the application block is that if you're blocking TikTok, especially like TikTok is a great example because there's a bunch of stuff that goes on with TikTok. So if you use the application control to block TikTok, that means Akamai is going to be monitoring that. So as TikTok makes changes and there's different changes with that domain, we're going to make sure and that category still stays blocked. The thing that the advantage when you're blocking TikTok is there's stuff that goes on with TikTok. Like, if you've ever noticed when you go to different websites, there's little TikTok analytics and there's trackers and there's all sorts of goofy stuff that goes on. So I've noticed, in my lab PC when I've got TikTok set to block in my lab policy, and I'll just be on my lab PC just doing generic surfing and stuff, and every once in a while I'll just see these little pop-ups saying that there's TikTok domains are being blocked. So I think you'll get better coverage using application control. So if there's an application control for it, I would suggest using that and only use the list for things that don't necessarily fall in as an application that's being tracked. So maybe something that's not in a category or not in a list. It's probably won't be too many of those, but there would be the things to do that. Now there's other things that come up with these block lists. So a lot of times folks will be like MSISAC members and they'll get that MSISAC threat feed and want to upload those domains into a list. You can certainly do that. I will tell you that you don't have to do that. We actually use the MSISAC threat feed as part of our threat intelligence. So anything on those lists will be in the SIA database. So you don't need, that's just a duplicate effort for doing that. So any of those, kind of threat feeds that you might subscribe to from whatever, service du jour you might be using, we probably have those in our database already. But you can, put them on lists if you want to, but I would suggest to you that that's probably a redundant effort and you shouldn't need to do that.
Hey, Douglas, is there a list somewhere of which lists Akamai is ingesting so that folks can know when it is redundant or not? Is that in documentation anywhere?
No, we don't have, that's not documented. I don't even know myself. I know that 90% of the threat data comes from Akamai's own data. I mean, Akamai arguably is the largest DNS provider in the world. We're resolving about 2/3 of the world's DNS queries. The number keeps going up. I think we're up at either 11 trillion or 13 trillion DNS requests that we process every single day. So we kind of have a good idea where the bodies are buried on the internet. So we get a good picture of the threat landscape from that perspective. Plus our delivery of about 1/3 of global web traffic kind of gives us a good base of threat intel. And we do augment that, of course, then with the MSISAC. We've got a partnership with Center for Internet Security, so we're ingesting their threat feed. We do get a couple of other threat feeds, but I would suggest anything on any of those publicly obtainable threat feeds is probably going to be in our threat intelligence anyway.
Great, thank you. And before we move away from custom lists, Stephen Reeves made a good point around the utilization of the exceptions on the lists. So in the event that you, when you update your policy to start blocking the pornography categories, but let's say there is a domain that your users need to access that is for educational purposes, right? That would be the perfect use case for that allow list, that custom exception list.
Yes.
And again, I know Stephen and his team can advise on this, but it would be in line with whatever your policy is that you have to make those exceptions, right, to the policy.
Stephen always has good points. I'm glad he's on the call.
Yeah.
And he brings up a great point that if you don't have an allow list set up in your configuration, I would suggest after the call, jump into Control Center, set up an allow list, and you can call your allow list whatever you want, and it doesn't have to have anything on it. But I would set one up anyway, just to have it, and we'll go ahead and I'll show you how to associate it with your policy. But if you have that allow list already set up, if you need to provide access to a domain right away, so in Steven's example where there's a category that's being blocked, but there's an exception we need to make, you'll have that ready to go. The other kind of use case for that is, like I said, Akamai is, resolving about 2/3 of the world's DNS queries. We're dealing with millions, if not billions, of different domains every single day. So it would be absolutely insane of me to sit in front of you today and say that our threat intelligence is going to be 100% accurate 100% of the time. Just doesn't happen. There's going to be instances where a domain might be miscategorized and we might be blocking it, inadvertently. Now you can report those to us and we'll get it fixed, but that could take a day or so. So if you need to restore access to that right away, if you have an allow list already set up, you can come in, pop that domain into your allow list, and you can restore access to it in a matter of a couple of minutes versus waiting for us to, go through the process of reevaluating the domain for you.
Hey, Douglas, one more question for you about the
Sure.
MCNC lists that get ingested into the Akamai threat intelligence. Do you know if those come in as is, or if there is any Akamai analysis that's done on the MSISAC list specifically? So if like they say block it, it's coming in, and you're making that same recommendation.
Yeah. We're, yep.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right. Now going back into our policy, if we go here to our custom list section, this is where you apply those lists. So now you can have as many lists as you want. And of course, you can have different policies too. So you can select what of your lists then are applied to this particular policy. So when I select this little link here, now I can find the list that I just created. And if you've got multiple lists, you'll be able to select what list is associated with this policy. When we associate it, now I can select, hey, what is going to happen when we see stuff on this list? So for known, maybe I want to block. And then here's where I would do like the suspected part. So I can have it either the same or, you know what, I want to just monitor the stuff in my suspected portion of the list. So you can do it that way. Now, the exception list works exactly the same way, only when we select your allow list and associate that, it's just going to set that action to bypass. We're going to bypass that list for you. Okay. So by setting that up ahead of time, so now this is set up kind of the way that I would suggest doing it. Now, if I need to go and restore access to a domain, I can just go into the list section, put my domain in that allow list. It's already associated with the policy. We'll start allowing it right away. Okay. All right. Now, when we go back here out to the policies, I want to just bring your attention to one little thing here. See, we got this little stranger danger warning symbol over here. It's telling us that the proxy is enabled, but we don't have a certificate activated. Oh, what is that about? Think about what happens when we are proxying domains. So when we are turning on that proxy service, it's basically saying, hey, Akamai, you are allowed to be a trusted man in the middle. You're able to open up the headers of our request to look at the full URL to see what's being requested, right? And if we're thinking about what that might entail, just about everything on the internet today is HTTPS. They're secure sites, right? So we would need to be able to have a certificate in place to open that header to look at it. So very, very, very important to know that if you're going to use the proxy service, you must set up a certificate first. So let's look and see what that is about. If we go here to the certificate section, there's a proxy certificate area. There are two options for setting up a certificate. If we choose this Akamai certificate option, continue to the next step, it will generate an Akamai certificate. You can then download that certificate, and now you deploy that out to all your client devices. You would push that out to all your clients as a trusted root certificate. Okay. In that case, we'll use that Akamai certificate. Off to the races. An easier way to do it, especially if you have like a Windows domain, is to use the non-Akamai certificate method. If you did that and continuing to the next step, it would generate a certificate signing request. You can then have that CSR, you download it, have it signed by the certificate authority of your choice. So in a Windows domain, what you could do is have your internal Windows certificate authority sign that CSR. All domain joined computers would trust that Windows CA, so that makes it an easy way to deploy that certificate. But understand that we need to have the certificate first, then turn on the proxy. If you turn on the proxy and didn't deploy your certificate, it's going to be a terrible outcome for your users. They're going to have, they're not going to be able to get to different sites. They're going to get certificate errors in their browser. It's just, it's a big heinous mess. I had a county, a big customer of mine, doing a POC of this, and I told him 5 times to do this. I went through that same speech 5 different times. They didn't listen to a word that came out of my mouth, and they turned on the proxy without deploying the certificate. It was terrible. So please don't do that. All right, let's look at the client software. So we talked about having a client available, and the primary use case for the client is to protect devices that might not always be behind your firewall. So folks that are maybe working from home, folks that travel, folks that, for whatever reason, just not on the network all the time, we can put a client on their device to keep them protected when they're not safely behind your firewall. So to use the client, we just turn it on here. We can, do a global enable of all clients by just sliding that slider over. You can turn them all off again if you ever needed to, just by turning them off again. You can do it that way. Over here on our version control, you are going to see we've got 2 versions available for download in Control Center. We've got our Windows version, our Mac version, and you can download those and just install them as you would install any other software on your devices. In the applicable Play stores, Apple Store or Google Play Store, you've got versions that can be used for all your Apple devices, your Android devices. The Play Store version will work on Android or Chromebooks. Sorry, Chromebooks is what I was trying to say. And as long as your Chromebooks can run Android software, all the modern ones can. So you can use that on the Chromebooks as well. You want to, if you ever wanted to read the release notes here, it's got a little thing here. I'm going to click on this just to show you one thing, just so you understand what this client is. We'll see this Zero Trust client is now what we call a Guardicore platform agent. This client, for those of you that use like our enterprise application access product, you might know that, we can use this same client to be used with secure internet access. We can use it with enterprise application access. So that's our Zero Trust application access product. What's this Guardicore thing? Guardicore is another tool that we have in our Zero Trust suite, which is a micro segmentation product. So that's kind of a host-based firewall product that uses an agent. And we've kind of made a platform out of this thing. So this Guardicore platform agent can be used for all 3 products now. So we can be a microsegmentation agent, it can be the application access agent, and it can be the DNS firewall agent as well. So if you're just using secure internet access, no problem. You'll just use the SIA portion of the client, and that's all you'll see. So wanted to show you really quickly maybe what this client would look like. So another thing that we get questions on from time to time, especially from folks that just use secure internet access or DNS firewall product, they'll see this access thing. And when the client fires up, you might see, hey, we want to authenticate with a client or do anything with the client. If you're just using secure internet access, pay no mind to this access portion of the client. So this section right here, don't worry about that at all. You won't have to do anything with that. It doesn't apply to you. You're not using the application access product. So when the client is installed and active, you'll see that your threat protection is is set up. So you get a little green check mark saying that the device is protected. In the settings, you can turn off the threat protection. So, and you've got the ability to choose whether users can do that or not, but you can turn that client off for troubleshooting purposes or things like that if you need to. Okay.
Hey,
So
Douglas.
here's where we go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Just a point of clarification for devices that are never going to leave campus and the network that's configured with the policy, what's the benefit for having the ETP client, or I'm sorry, the zero trust client?
So the client can be, so the other thing that the client will do is provide device information when somebody does something that violates your policy. So let's say somebody's clicked on a phishing link, right? We'll go ahead and block that by the policy, give the user an error page, but then the client will be able to give us the device information. It'll give us the machine name. The client will give us the logged in user name as well. So one reason that you might want to put clients on stuff, even that doesn't leave the environment, is to get that device identification. Now we'll talk about the connectors here in a minute. That will do a similar function, so you wouldn't have to install clients on a bunch of devices. But if you wanted to install clients on all your devices, I've got customers that do that. They would say, I'm putting this client on all my devices. It gives them the machine name then of anybody that's, doing stuff that's outside of the policy.
Great, thank
So
you.
that would be the only reason to do so. Okay. Now, mentioned that you can make a choice. Do the users have the ability to disable that threat protection? You can turn that on if you want. You can make this little help desk feature enabled to require a code for the disable action. So if I turn that on, means that, hey, I can generate a disable code here. And now we need that code to be able to turn the client off. So in that situation, great for the help desk. The help desk might have access to the code. They would be able to turn off the client to troubleshoot an issue, but a user wouldn't be able to just turn it off to bypass like your acceptable use policy, or to, you got that pornography block on. Hey, I want to go to this porn site. I'm just going to turn my client off and I can get to the porn stuff. Making that disable action require a code could be the advantage for that. Other thing that you might want to do here in the configuration is turn on this transparent traffic interception. What this does is, if I turn this on, this basically allows the client to intercept traffic without modifying your operating system or browser settings. So if we turn that off, basically what the client will do is kind of install itself as a tap adapter. It will change the DNS settings on your network interfaces to 127.0.0.1. If we turn on this transparent traffic interception, it will not do that. And this works especially if you're in a Windows environment. Turning on a transparent traffic interception just makes that client work better. So would encourage you to do that. Okay. There is an activation code. So this is the activation code that will cryptographically associate your instances of the client with your configurations here. So when it's asking for a code to install the software, that's the code that we need right there. When you get your clients installed, we will see a little report that's generated here that shows you all of the devices that have the client. Is the threat protection enabled or not? What version of the client they're using? And like I said, that client will report the device local user. So you'll see that populated here. And then the last time that we've seen it updated. So that's your client software. Once again, designed to primarily protect devices that leave your network, but if you got stuff that doesn't leave your network, we'll still be able to get that device information. Now, the other way of getting device information is to use these virtual machines that we call security connectors. Now, I brought up a quick graphic here that shows you what this the way this works. So ideally what you would do is install 2 of these virtual machines. We've got a version for VMware and one for Microsoft Hyper-V. Ideally, put two of these in here, and you can give them private IP addresses. Now, what you would do when you get these set up is then set your client devices, either with DHCP scope or if you're manually configuring the network interfaces, set their primary and secondary DNS server values to use the IP addresses of these virtual machines. So what happens is these virtual machines are basically little DNS traffic cops, if you will. They're going to get all the DNS requests. They're going to evaluate that DNS request. Is this something internal to your network? If so, send it here to your internal DNS server. It's going to know how to resolve those things. Anything external, though, it's going to send it out here to Akamai. We'll go ahead and take action on that request based upon your policy. Now, it looks like maybe we've got something that's infected down here, maybe making a call out to a known command and control domain. Since the DNS forwarder accepts the DNS request from this device, it's now able to capture the IP address and machine name of that device. So security connectors, the virtual machines, going to get you the IP address and machine name. The client will give you machine name and device local user. Okay, so that could be another decision that you make depending on what information you want to get when folks are doing things that are a violation of your policy.
Hey, Douglas, real quick, I just wanted to give you a 9-minute
Yep.
screen here at the end. And I do have a couple of questions that are coming in that I will ask Douglas when he gets through the rest of the content here.
Sure. And we're almost done with configuration here. Last thing we would talk about is the security connector itself. If you want to use these security connectors, let us know. We've got a video that will walk you through step-by-step how to do this. They take about 10 minutes to set up. They're super easy. The longest part is actually downloading the package. So we've got the VMware Hyper-V ones. If you've got stuff out in AWS or Azure and you want to use a security connector out there, we've got that available as well. These packages take a few minutes to download. That's typically the longest part. So once you get that thing up and running in your virtual environment, basically you're going to give it a couple of IP addresses. These are private IP addresses, specify DNS server values and that kind of things, do a network check. And then you're going to do a activation process. So basically I would add a security connector here. When I'm ready to activate, I click this activate link and this gives me a code that I can put in my activation window in the virtual machine. This is going to cryptographically associate your security connectors with your configuration here. So we know, hey, the security connector details, who does that belong to? Oh, it belongs to you because of this activation code. Okay. But like I said, if you want to use the security connectors, let me know. We got a video that helps you, walks you through step by step how to set it up. It's super easy to do, and you can set two of these things up in, probably maybe a half an hour or less. Okay. So delete that. All right. So that's all of the kind of configuration kind of stuff that you can do. From the perspective of reporting, like mentioned, when we get here to the dashboard, I'm going to switch really quick over to something that's got some data in here just so it's a little bit easier to see when you've got some data stuff in here. So I will go here to Enterprise Center. All right. And when you when you jump into Enterprise Center for secure internet access, you are going to land on this, what we call threat event or threat overview dashboard. This is going to show us all of the different events that we've had. So all your command and control, malware, phishing, all that kind of stuff right here. And all these different widgets that let you know about what's happening. So if you've got the proxy turned on, these HTTP widgets will be populated. All these different kind of things happen here. And then you've got some threat events that are associated with their, different threat events and those kind of things. So all this kind of overview information about what's happening in your environment. We can click on these. So if I wanted to see, hey, what's going on with these command and control events, I could click on the CNC button here, and it would take me right to this Threat events dashboard. This is the one that I was talking about before, where if you had something set to monitor, like this one is a good example right here. We've got a command and control thing set to monitor. So instead of blocking, we see monitor taking as the action. So this is going to show us the time, what happened, did we block it? Did we monitor it? What location it came from, and the domain itself. Now, when we open up the threat events details page, if I click on this little icon right next to a row, really hard to see, but if I click there, it brings up the event details pane that shows us even more information about this request. If I'm using the client software or the security connectors, we will see in here the device name, the IP address, and all this different kind of stuff. Here, our indicator of compromise window will have everything that we know about the domain, how long we've been tracking it, the domain information, if there's a threat label associated with it, the name servers and registration information. If it's not obfuscated, will be shown here, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Other reports that you have are the access control report. That's the same as your threat events report, only it's going to have information about your acceptable use policy. So your pornography blocks, all that kind of stuff would be in that. We've got a DNS activity report. This is going to show us all of the DNS requests that have come from your organization. So you'll be able to see it by location. So as you open this up, you'll see all of the DNS requests, all of the stuff that's bad that we blocked, and all of the like legitimate stuff, people going to Google, Amazon, and all that kind of stuff would show up in here as well. So kind of a DNS log for you. Very quickly, last thing I'll show you in reports is the schedule reports and notifications section. In the alert section, this is where you would go to set up your alerts for if you've got alerts turned on in your policy. This is where you specify where those alerts go to. You can set up reports for your dashboards or your event reports if you want to maybe get that threat events dashboard sent to you each day. You could specify what locations you want and put your email address in here, and then how often do I want it? Do I want it every day or a specific day of the week? We'll send you that dashboard each time. You could do the same thing with your access control, or you could get everything, all events, if you'd like. So that was a really quick overview. I wanted to make sure we saved just a couple minutes to answer the questions that might have come in.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Douglas. All right, so we got 2 minutes, so lightning speed here. Could you show how you can navigate to the tech docs, like right in the section? So if you're doing the configuration, you can navigate directly to the tech docs that are associated with that individual section that you're looking at.
Sure. So let's say I'm working on a policy here, and I'll just open any policy. Right up here in the upper right hand side, there's this little question mark. So anytime you're wanting to know more about what's happening in this particular thing here, we can click on this little thing, and it's here's how you create a policy and everything associated with creating a policy here.
And then once you're in those tech docs, right, you can navigate on that left-hand side to all the other sections.
Absolutely, yeah, everything on here. Now, just understand that there are some legacy features that are in tech docs that talk about stuff that we no longer sell and that MCNC didn't have on their configurations anyway. So if you see things like DLP policies or identity integrations and stuff like that, that's not part of the service any longer.
So blame Douglas is what is
blame me, exactly. And I do have there is another thing, and I think the MCNC folks have it. We've got kind of a condensed version of tech docs, so kind of the a quick user guide. So if you want to have a PDF of a user guide that I created that kind of goes through most of the stuff that I talked about today, we can get that to you as well. It kind of condenses that tech docs from a tech writer perspective and all the stuff that may or may not apply to the kind of distilled Reader's Digest version of it. Let us know. We can send you that user guide.
Yeah, and I'll send that along when I send the recording. That way everyone can
Perfect.
proactively have it. So couple of extra questions. So apologies that we are running a little bit late. If you're able to stay with us, great. If you are really anxious about what these questions might be but have to drop, they will be in the recording. So all right. So what about going back to the Zero Trust client? Is there a way to clean up old devices that were previously enrolled that are no longer utilizing the client? Like
That has
restore.
been traditionally a, a sticking point, and before you really couldn't, there wasn't a clean way of doing that. Um, in the newer versions of the client, if the client does not report in, if we see a client hasn't checked in a period of time, I want to say, and I'll verify the specific time, but I want to say it's 60 days. If we haven't seen that client in 60 days, that device will fall off of the client report, so you'll no longer see it in your client report after a period of time. I believe that period of time is 60 days, but it will fall off if the client hasn't checked in a certain amount of time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If the software, so the Zero Trust client again is on a machine that has deep freeze or a similar software, will it still update?
I'm not familiar with deep freeze, but yeah, it will coexist with like different EDRs or different other clients that you have installed. They will coexist. There are rare occasions where you might need to make some configuration changes either in your EDR or typically in the EDR software to make them play nicely in the sandbox. You might need to put some exclusions in. A good use case is Sentinel-1. We use Sentinel-1 here at Akamai, but we don't use the firewall part. Like Sentinel-1 has a firewall feature, and I know one of my other clients uses that, and they had to go into Sentinel-1 and make some changes so Sentinel-1 wasn't blocking the Zero Trust client functionality. So you may have to do that in certain cases, not all. But if you do run into struggles with that, where you've got another, like one of your other softwares that might not be playing nicely in the sandbox with our client, let us know because we can help.
Perfect. Thank you. And still on the client, if it has been gone for 60 days and then checks back in, will it just automatically show back up in the dashboard, or would you have to re-add the device?
It should come back, yeah.
Okay. All right. So a question about the security connector, is it compatible with Proxmox? And if so, which of those options would you select?
Select the VMware. Proxmox does work brilliantly, actually, and I know that because I've tested it in my lab. I use Proxmox in my lab,
Wonderful. Thank you.
so I don't have that Akamai budget to put a full VMware stack in my home lab, so I had to use Proxmox.
All right.
Proxmox on an old laptop, it works great.
All right, so let's see here. One more question about the security. Is there a limit to how many Zero Trust security connector apps or licenses that you can use?
Crunch all you want, we'll make more. You can have as many as you'd like.
There
So
we
as
go.
many virtual machines. So if you got, different buildings in your campus, whatever the case may be, you want to put, all right, I need 2 VMs in, each one of my campuses. So I would need 50 of them, maybe. Yep, go ahead, have all you want. No limits. Those are not price impacting functions of the software. So you can have as many clients as you want, as many of the connectors as you want.
Perfect. All right. And so the last question that's going to make the cut is, a lot of browsers are using DNS over HTTPS. Douglas, I know we've talked about this before. Is there thoughts on how to address that, or is that a blind spot?
It can be, there's ways around it. You would typically have to disable that, and you can disable that kind of globally through like if you're on Windows environment using like a group policy, like a GPO, you can go in and specify that you're turning that off in the browsers. It can get kind of tricky, like Firefox will have that enabled by default, so you'd have to go in and disable that on a client by client perspective, but so it can be a blind spot if you're not aware of it. But if you are aware of it and have the means to be able to go in and put policies, device policies in place that disable that DOH or the DOH part of it in the browser will work. Now, on that topic, your clients and connectors will use DNS over TLS, so DOT. So when you're looking at your like threat events reports and stuff, you'll see an on-ramp type of DOT, meaning that request was sent by either a client or a connector. So that's how you can tell, are my DNS requests coming from the clients or the connectors? You'll see an on-ramp type of DOT. If it's coming from your DNS server, it'll just be a regular DNS port 53 request.
Perfect. Thank you, Douglas. All right. So cut off questions here. I did in the chat post a few ways that you can contact MCNC. So support, which secops at mcnc.org, will get you to our security operations team. Their phone number is listed there as well. If you have general inquiries about the service or you would like a configuration review, hey, this all looks really awesome, but I haven't logged in a long time and would love to have someone walk through it with me. We have resources available that can do that as well. So just email that securityservices@mcnc.org email address and we can set that up for you. So again, thank you to the system office for continuing to provide this service to all the colleges. And we are here to help if you have any questions around anything that Douglas reviewed today, or once you get into your environment, if things aren't looking as you expected, please reach out and we're happy to help you. So with that being said, Douglas, thank you so much for your time today. It's always a pleasure to have you walk us through the changes. We've been doing this now, I feel like every year or so, we've been doing one of these overviews. So again, thank you for all of those that hung around. We only had a couple of people that dropped off, so I appreciate that, and hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Thursday afternoon. Thanks
Thank
all.
you for your trust in Akamai. We appreciate your business, folks. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.